Mizmor LeDavid Adonai Roi Lo Yachzor Benois Dashe Yahbit Seini Amen Menuchai Sina Aleini Nafshi Yeshoive V'yancheni B'mahglei Tzedek L'man Shemai Kam ki elech b'geitz ha'moves lo yiroro Ki ato imodi Shevtecho mishantecho Heimo yinachamuni Taroich lefanai shulchan eget tzoroi Tishanto b'shemen roishi koisi rivoyo Achtoi v'chesed Yerdefuni kol yemei chayoy V'shavti b'beis Adonai Li'orech yomim Reb Chanan Talbot Morda Asa Shlita.
Came to give the last COVID for Tzvi ben Reb Yosef. The Emes around, anyone who was close to the family the last few years, we saw, I was amazed. Was amazed how many friends came. Every Shabbos, people won't give him the COVID. Just amazed to me. Just read in the Pirkuvis, Kol Shriach, Habrius Neuchem Meni, Riach Hamukim Neuchem Meni. Mamash, it was every Shabbos, and befrat, we had a minyan, Erev Shabbos, we were waiting in the Tzis Neshama to say the last things. Hashem Melech, Hashem Mulech Mamle, the minute that we say, B'shas Tzis Neshama. I haven't seen that in years. Years I haven't seen that. That shows Mamish what the Choshev Nifter he was. And I will tell you something else. He became very close to me. And he was one of the few people that I visited when he was so sick, was not afraid to talk about dying. He said Vidi very often, and he said he had made a cheshbon, and the thing that happened that he came and he asked me to come back, discuss certain things, how to deal with it. Very few people. I've dealt with people know that they're dying. Yeah, I said, Git on. He was absolutely not afraid. He had the clarity. Anyone who knew Heschel, he had such a, after I found out he's an anical from Shimei Stelova, I said, he has to ask the Kedusha. He had such a strength in him, didn't give under. He was nifter Shabbos Kodesh, mamish beginning of Shabbos. Now, many people don't know, the doctors gave up on him a week before Shvius. I was in the hospital, I came to him a week before Shvius, and the doctor told me, I don't think he's gonna make it overnight. This is the doctor who treats cancer patients. And again, the doctor twice called the family to come. And Heschel did not give up. It reminded me of the Sante Gemurah. It says, Eschanan, zog the Medrash, Eschanan Lashem Be'esi Ilemoy, the Medrash Moshe Beni Daven Tuf Kiv Tes Vuv Tfilis, 515 Tfilis he davened. Boy Shlem says, Rav Loch, Al Toise Davar Alai Beduvar Hazeh, don't daven one more tefillah. Looks like he would have davened one more tefillah, the Boy Shlem must have given to him. So Pachad Gezach. You know, we all raise children, and when children kvetch, I used to tell them, Hecher, kvetch, I'm not giving in. But, you know, kvetch, you're bothering, you know. Moshe Rabbeinu's tefillah was so powerful, one more tefillah, the Rebbeinu Shalom would have to give in. The Rebbeinu Shalom had to tell him, Rav Loch, I toise Davidu Elazeh. Reminds me of a Gemara in Masechtas Shabbos. The Gemara says, the Pusik in Tillim, Kapitel Lametes, David Melech said, Hoidi'eni Hashem Kitzi, Imidas Yomai Mahi. So the Gemara, Hoidi'eni Hashem is Kitzi, Zuk Rashi, what does Kitzi mean? Please tell me the future. We all have this cheshik. Just tell me what's going to be in a year, 2 years. Say human nature, the Rabban says, to know the future. Hoidi'eni Hashem is Kitzi. B'nai Shlema says, I don't tell anyone what's going to happen. Midas Yuma Mahi. How long am I going to live? B'nai Shlema says, there's a shvur, I don't tell anyone how long they're going to live. So David Melech begs the Rebbeinu Shalom, says, tell me which day I'm going to die. He says, you're going to die Shabbos. So David Melech gives the Rebbeinu Shalom a hard time with the Gemara. He says, maybe I should die Motzei Shabbos. So he can't. Hegia zmanu shemalchus shloime ve'ei malchus noges bechavata filamunanima. Shloime HaMelech has to become king, and there's no way. So David HaMelech says, let me die Erev Shabbos. Erev Shabbos he can't die, because I need your tefillis, I need your tishbuchas, more worth than Eilef Oilis, what Shloime has gone. The Rebbeinu Shalom says, you have to die Shabbos. This is when I was thinking, we were all standing there right before Shabbos. When Shalom wanted Tzvi, this is what he had to do. He had to die on Shabbos. This is what the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted. It's like, I can't do it on Melech after the die on Shabbos. You know what's amazing? The Gemara comes and says, David HaMelech went, and he tried to outwit the Malach HaMuvas. So the Gemara, what did he do? He was learning Torah the whole time. I understand, the Rebbeinu Shalom sends the Malach HaMuvas. Are you playing games? Who do you think the Rebbeinu Shalom told you? You're going to have to die Shabbos. So the Gemara put the sick people and began a whole story. The came the Malach who shook the trees, he stopped for him, and he learning, and David HaMelech died. Looks like comes to living, you'll have to fight the Malach HaMuvas with the Rebbeinu Shalom. Tzvi ben Rabbi Yosef was fighting for the life. The doctor gave up to him so often, and here he was, mamish. You know, it's just amazed. Anyone who was amazed around. To add, I told a small story. I didn't know he was a Rebbe Sheinikl. So Shabbos I would come, and you know, I said over what I said in shul. You know, Pasha, there's so much talking of your Pashas, Ramban, Sepan, Chofetz Chaim, and they say, you know, Chassidish Shavot. Tells me I'm Ben Achaben from the Shimei Starava, who's a Talmud from the Melech, a Talmud from the Yidei Kudish. So I told him the few Chassidish Shavot. I remember saying this word to him, B'Amisran Tzapnei Yeshua. The reason I'm saying the word, because some Sefer in the Haspedim said that Divrei Torah, they say on the Nifta, that's the Kanafayim, the wings that the Neshama goes up. Some Sefer is famous in the Haspedim, said a lot of Divrei Torah. Even that Ika Hesped is that we should do more of Tshiva. The Ika Hesped says the Chodesh is that we should Chayinus Liboy. This is the way we all have to travel one day. And we have to take advantage. We have to do tshuva. Anyways, the Pnei Yeshua sagt, da moire die gewort. The Gemara Masechta Shabbos says, when the Shas Chorben, the Rebbeinu Shalom, with the Pusik in Cheskel, Pusik says they send Rebbeinu Shalom Shishu Anushim to be Machlev Yerushalayim, to destroy the Yerushalayim Eretz Yisrael. We ask, Mihi Shishu Anushim, who are the 6 people? So Gemara counts all the shyness of anger. Chema, Av, Ketzev, Mashchis, Uvain, 6 buta uvais, the Gemara says. These are the 6 buta dinim that's coming to Machrev Yerushalayim. Zog the Pnei Yeshi an Tesanta Zach. Shem Elokim is Gemati 86. And 6 times 86 is Gemati 516. Some of you are quick in math. Tzvi was very quick at math. Herschel was very quick when I said the Gemati. Zog the Pnei Yeshi, the Beinishtem said if you would have one more tefillah, he's going to vatel all the butadinim. It's not the time. Rav loch al tois oid beduar hazeh. One more tefillah of yours is going to wipe out all. That's not the time. Moshe told Moshe Rabbeinu, we still need dinim. There's going to be a world. This still has to go. That's the. I want to say another word I once told him. He had gewaldig anua. I just want to say, whenever you visit him, I came to visit. All he wanted, we should talk about the Torah. Every time. And I didn't realize that once he told me, when you come, I look forward. I have prepared something when he was well, much well. It's just amazing. It's amazing how his whole, what he looked in life and what he wanted in life. The fact is that he was a Ben Torah. I remember once he asked me, I don't know my shaykhs was, years ago he used to ask me shalos all the time. One time he gave me a very hard time. You guys know, your children know you can have a shal, and look, he came once, he came twice, after Shalom Shulchan Aruch, he read here this way, you know. I knew when I answer him, I have to be very, very prepared. He's going to come and come again, he's coming again, and until he feels comfortable. It was like, his brother-in-law told me, it was like black and white. It's got to be clear, no gray area. It's got to be shots and ras, we say in Yiddish. I told him, when I was on a word, I told him, you had gewaldig anua, so I want to share with this word. Gemara in Bruches says that Bilam was able to figure out how to curse. How do you figure out? The Gemara says, Keil Zoyim B'chol Yoim. The Rebbeinu Shloim gets angry every day. Kamo Zamoy. How much is the Rebbeinu Shloim's anger? Rega. Kirega Ba'apoi. The Gemara Bruches, the Rebbeinu Shloim gets angry every day, Rega. Bilam knew that Rega, that second, and he took advantage of that second, and he would curse. Frag Tosfos, what could you say in a second? What curse could he say? The Tosfos has 2 treats. One Tosfos says he could have said kuleim, to annihilate. V'yaboich Hashem is a klula levrucha. The Rebbeinu Shloim from Kalem he made melech. Isrias melech boy. It's not Tosfos. He switched it around. So Bilam knew that second, and he wanted to curse. Frag the Belzer Rebbe from the early Belzer Rebbes. Keil zoyim b'chol yoim. Keil is midas harachman. Chesed keil kol hayoim. Why does the Rebbeinu Shloim get angry every day? Well, it makes the whole thing. B'chol yoim keil every day. There's an amor, there's an angry every day, and Bilam knew that second. Now, v'chal is solution keil, solution achman. Dann wurde die gewort zu der Belzer Rebbe. Nur it says, Loilam, Yargis, Udam, Yetzer Tova, Yetzahara. You should get angry to fight the Yetzahara against the Yetzer Tova against the Yetzahara. So the Mashu, even though anger is a terrible zach, but to fight the Yetzahara, you need a little bit anger. You need a bit azes, the Kedusha, as we say, but you need a little tzvi hadat. You wouldn't let go. You know, this azes. You need a little bit of anger. Olim Yargis. So the Gemara says in Brochas, the Rebbeinu Shloim, all the days when Bilam, he did not get angry. There was no anger. So the Bilam said, that's why Shevet Shimon didn't have this koyach of the Yargizum Yetzahara, but one Shloim didn't get angry. He says the Keil Zoyim B'chol Yom the Rebbeinu Shloim does, that we should have a little koyach to fight the Yetzahara. Comes out When that days it didn't, so Shevet Shimon didn't have this koyach. Urir apam ki oz v'avrusim ki keshusa. Moshe cursed and said Shimon had nothing left to him. So that's what Shevet Shimon was nichshel. I remember he had such a nur from this word. He mentioned this a few times. I told him last year, remember this time. Anyways, the emes is that it's a terrible loss for us. This is it. Ish mechubed, really was an ish mechubed. And, you know, someone asked me that I should ask Mechila for the people that didn't come enough. I told him, I don't know why you need to ask Mechila. Some of the people used to come visit him. I haven't seen this. I visited a lot of Cholim, never saw this. Maybe we should help, that he should be a Meilitz for the family, for his wife, for the family, for the children, for the grandchildren. Ibuva Muitz Netzach, Amucha, Adinoy, Hayim Dimam, Bal Kapunim, Chapesai, Musam Al Kapunim, Adina Dibba.
Shmuel Vassman, Rosh Kollel Shlita.
A pachad, Schwarzer Gläuben, we're here. In our minds, Heshy is so alive, so malichias, even towards the end. The Rav Shlita mentioned people there Erev Shabbos, not a common thing. People told me then, they're traumatized. V'at mir geschickt, this is the message of a Hachai Yitein Aliboy. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent Heshy to give us that message, the person who was not afraid of Misa, the person who was not gerechnet mit Misa, what has to be prepared, what has to be corrected, to steer Misa in the face maturely, something we all struggle with. And he was a shliach, but to traumatize us, Chai Yitein Aliboy, just go through a number of inyanim. First and foremost, his kesher to limud HaTorah. The Rav mentioned he wasn't soivel. He wasn't soivel anything wrong. I spoke to his previous Rosh Chabura. What Meure gehad von ihm. What hat gesagt was richtig. And the minute he made a fuss in learning with his whole neimus, with his whole ziskait, with his starkheit. It's nicht azay. And he tried to dray, nein, it's nicht azay. And he was always right, always right. Somebody told me that when he didn't realize who he was before, wie hat gehalten azay stark and such a man learning. And came nicht weg from learning. He was always learning. On a high ramah, with a sharpkeit, with a kishrin, the chiyus, but aufgeheben. Talking earlier, somebody said shir for him, a number of chaver for a number of years. He said, ich habe gestiegen von ihm. Of course, they both steig from each other, but the Maggid Shir should steig, having to respond to such a ramah, was a mechayiv. That was the ramah of learning and the constant learning, and the haltana learning, the geschmack. I want to focus on something which I think every one of us understands as such a primary, central tchuna of Heshy. His impact on such a huge, wide range of people, from Kotza LaHakotza, Ad LaHafli Mechayev Apshat. Certainly had, not going to spend time focusing on off the charts social skill, which he used so profoundly. That's not enough. person has a tremendous social skill doesn't do justice to explain. There's something more. I think all of us were nimshach to a simchas hachayim, such a freiliche person, and at least misofel chutz, always a smile, always a chuckle, always a zis of art. A zis of art. It's hard to believe a person's life is constantly always good, but the way he projected himself, whatever he's going through is nobody's business. And constantly, people, more than one person has told me they've never seen him in every conversation without some line, a joke, a leitzanos, a veken with a simcha. There's an emanating simcha sachaim that came from him. It was 2-3 weeks ago. I visited him in the hospital, so schwach, lying flat, barely able to whisper. Mishpacha told me to keep it very short. I shouldn't come in at all. No, yes, come in, but very short. Came inside. Gewollt machen leicht. I said, Reb Heshy, I can come visit you in your house. You're probably coming here to the hospital. You want to give me more schar halicha. In a second, without a moment's hesitation, whispering, barely audible, you're right, I can't think of another reason why I came. That was his mitzias. That was his mitzias. That was his mitzias. As a chayil mesukin, machen leicht and freilach. What's remarkable is that we meet freiliche people, leichte people, geschmacke people. It's very often at a cost. To see such a meshundige yireh shamayim, a person who, whatever he stood for, was unwavering, but at the same time being able to make everybody comfortable in his presence, from the Goframa to the more Moderna to the Americans, any walk of life. He was always able to connect on such a deep level, on such a leichte level, to make everybody so comfortable. The hashpah that he had, and his mishpacha, teaching in Yavne, like every Moisid in Klal Yisrael, a number of mishpachas coming from very chashav shirashim, very stark mishpachas, and a number of mishpachas otherwise. And the amount of hashpah coming directly from Mrs. Maryles, but from the bias, people used to like to have told me that their wives remembers numerous sudis in the Maryles house. These are people that everybody looked up to. These are starke b'nei Torah who are so normal, so geschmack, so approachable, so pleasant, so attractive. And people are nimshach to them. Everybody, mikatza al hakatza, and that gave them such an ability to be mashpia in a meshunite oifen. How many people's lives that we do know and how many people's lives that we don't know were so deeply impacted by the normalcy, the normale geschmack, the leichtkeit, as if everything is freilich, everything is upbeat, everything is gewaldig, with the Yerushalayim, with the direction. A meshundik is skabrus of seichel over leiv. And what had to be done, vimedaf is done, was something which was also boilet so stark. World of Torah, and Tefillah, and the Chesed. we all know how much Chesed goes on from the Taimche, one of a kind. That's not something Mrs. Maryles could do on her own. It's because there's a support from a bias, there's an encouragement, and the amount of spectrum of people who are nena from this that requires a constant interaction with. Zad lahafli. Reb Heshy's place was the kollel. That's where he was. For davening, for learning, for shiurim, for chaburis, second seder, night seder, mitzvah Shabbos shiurim, late at night, shemaitza, Chuvas Rebbe Akiva Eger. That was his mokum. Somebody reminded me now. He had his hat and jacket. He had a hat and jacket constantly in Beis Medrash when he was not there. He always has his hat and jacket available, and when anybody comes by and needs a hat for davening, Heshy Maryles' hat is right there. That's his mokum. That's it. His mokum is the Beis Medrash. His mokum is Torah. His mokum is Tefillah. Just mention also the Paris, the direct Paris that came out of his bias, the kinder, Kenai Nahara, side the kinder, side the Edom is in the Eineklich, and how much pride Heshy would take in his kinder. I was by him not so long ago. I was telling him a Maisa how he came from Lakewood. I was rushing to take care of something from the airport. I came gleich first to Kol Shimshon to daven mincha just before Shkia, chap the last mincha before Shkia, and I had to run after. There's some way I run inside, daven the mincha, and the mincha doyer to schlepped like a long mincha. So I recognized the voice. Who is this? It was Shimi daven. He says, I daven like I daven in the Kail, even in Kol Shimshon. The line daven doesn't matter if you're in a rush. It doesn't matter in davening. I told the story. I came back. I told the story to Reb Heshy, and he smiled, Kamuvan, and then it got platz the vein. I never saw him cry like that. And he took a such pride. He says, Shimi, reist the Himmel from here. Wie daven from here, reist the Himmel. He said enough Yiddish, reist the Himmel from here. It was like something that he was nisragish ad ein soif, but a pride, a gaiva. Baruch Hashem, das a kind. Ufgehad, it's not duvi, it's all the kinder, it's not the English, it's all the meidlach, the pride in the whole mishpach is something which is a nachas, lenetzach. Just in the last week or so, just to watch the diktuk behalacha and the hachnot, whatever the Rav says, there were things that Reb Heshy himself spoke directly about. The Gabi the Petira. Und was hat gesagt, man darf halten, bis kein Divrei Emes, a total hachno, and a harach, and a diktuk the halach is also something which was the essence of who she was. Should be a melitz yosher, not only for his Thai Rebbetzin, not only for his kinder eineklich, all yetzei chalatzov, but there's so many hundreds of to mention, maybe thousands to mention, who's mashpi on him and his mishpacha, melitz yosher, farens Allah, who should be zeiche to all the brachos, and mocha Hashem kim dinah upon him.
Reberish Goldenberg Shlita.
Pasuk in Yirmiyahu, ki ol ha'movetz b'chaleinu, bar b'amrineseinu. We had to give the covered achron, as it was mentioned, for Heshy, Reb Tzvi. I just realized, looking on my phone, that this is a 3-year from the beginning, when he got the Pesura. It was in May, I think, in 2023. And he wrote me that, unfortunately, he thinks that he just got a Pesura Ra, a Shverik Pesura, but Amir Hashem, followed by, it was Chodesh Sivan. So he wrote me, Sivan stands Samach Yud Vav Nun, Soif Yisurim, with Chilas Nisam. And that's what he looked forward to. And could be Taka with that Machla. He had 3 more years. Till it came now the Chodesh Av, Shabbos Nachmu, and Heshy Anenu. The Gemara, the Meid Kotten says, Ki noch nafshei de Reb Yochanan. Reb Yochanan left the world. Pasach of Reb Yitzchak ben Eliezer, Kol shayim li Yisrael, ki yoim bo Hashemesh b'tzarayim. Heshy, as we said, Baruch HaMavatz is b'chaleinu. Snuck in on Heshy. It's not the time for Heshy. Wasn't yet the time. He had many more years of Torah, of Shanant L'Vnecha, B'nei B'necha, Gemilz Chasodim, ala Torah, ala avoid v'gemilas chasodim, a home of gemilas chasodim. But ba moves b'chaleinu, ba shemesh b'tzarayim. The Ksav Sofer on a hesped on his father writes what pshat k'ba shemesh b'tzarayim, as the sun set in midday. As the pasuk in Amos also says, v'hoye b'yayim ahu, v'avesi shemesh b'tzarayim, the sun will set, v'chshachti l'oretz, k'yoyim oir, in midday the sun will set. Gives a marshal to a general. If the general gets old already, he can't lead his battalions. So the sun set midday, he can't go further. But sometimes you have a person that's strong and able to continue, and suddenly, Bar Shemesh B'tzurayim, it comes a darkness on our community, a darkness on the mishpacha, v'yin Heshy Anenu, that Heshy has left us. Interesting, Torah says, Bonim matem l'Hashem Elokeichem. Devin Ezra says that we have to realize a tzara that comes on a person, it's coming from a Kodesh Baruch Hu, that's an Av. It's not a Kodesh Baruch Hu, it's an ageder of an Av. And the father is Kerachem of Albonim. Even if it's a tzara, the Eibush there is the Balarachmim. They say over from the Kotzka that interessant that this month is called the Chodesh Av. Even though this month so many tragedies has happened, including today's tragedy in the month of Av, but yet that's telling us yet there's so many tzaras in the world. We went through so many golos and so many chabonos, but yet Av, there's an Abba b'Shamayim, there's a Tata in Himmel, and a Tata makes sure that even if it's a tzara, he's there to be the Baal Rachman for us. This week's parasha, the Torah tells us, "Vayadvam Eila Shalechem Mitzavcha Yoim Alavavecha Vishinantum Levanecha." Chavetz Chaim says, "How do you know Taka Hadvam Eila Shalechem Mitzavcha Yoim Alavavecha? How do we know that a person really has in his heart all the mitzvahs and feels V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha?" The answer is Vishinantum Levanecha. Look what he does with his children. If there's Vishinantum Levanecha, it's a raya that him there was a tremendous avos HaKodesh Baruch Hu, avos HaTorah, and avos HaMitzvahs. The Ksav Sofer brings down on this week's parasha, the parasha of Kriya Shema. It says, "V'limaltem moitzem es benechem ledaber bom b'shivtecha b'veisecha v'lechtecha v'aderech u'v'shabach v'mecha." Why doesn't the Torah just say, "V'limaltem moitzem es benechem ledaber bom"? What is the whole length? B'shivtecha b'veisecha v'lechtecha v'aderech. He explains that chinuch is in a way of parents being mechanech children. What is the correct way? Is to do it by setting an example, not by making rules and regulations, being somebody there, showing how you're supposed to act. It has to be, but not only at home. It continues when the children leave the home. That even when they leave the home, they go build their own homes. It's a continuation of the Messiah that they received in their home. Even if he gets older and he leaves, that chinuch won't leave him. Torah says by Avraham Avinu ki yedativ. Rashi says Lashon chibav lov l'man she'etzaves bonav es beis ha'achrov, he be mechanech his children. We don't find too much conversation in the Torah between Avraham and Yitzchak, or Sarah and Yitzchak. Yet the Torah says in Avraham Avinu, Yitzaves bonav es beis ha'achrav. Where is it? It was there by setting the example. You grew up in the home of Avraham and Sarah. There's a Yitzchak. Children sitting here today, they were here the last few weeks. We haven't seen them, but what beauty each child is, coming to daven, the tefillas, davening. This is all received in this beautiful home. This is a vishanant of Lanecha that Heshy gave them. Heshy, for 3 years, I think, come out every Shabbos, Erev Shabbos, received a talk or text. I just realized, as I said, it's 3 years looking back from the first text that he sent me. I don't recall ever a time complaining and bitterness. As it was said before, it was always with either some little cute little word. And even when he was in the middle of receiving, one time I texted him, I called, so he wrote back, he's now in the middle of treatment. But yet, yes, it's treatment, but we can talk, we can schmooze, we can be mechazik each other. To a point, now realizing that the last few weeks already, he had this besura that unfortunately there was nothing to do. And I think I have how he was involved in his grandchildren, making sure they have the right schools. And he wasn't easy. I'm going to call back in a few days. I hope you have an answer. And that's how he was. But he did it because he felt it's an achrayus of him, the Zayda, achrayus of his wife, the Baba. Our achrayus to see not only our children, the future generations having the best they can have. To send off. Heshy, you're going to the Olam Emes. Tremendous loss for our community, for involved in the yeshiva for years, perfect parents, always there for the children. Besides that, she always, the choir that he led, always led children into the choir, whether they knew how to sing or not how to sing, stood next to a mic that didn't work, whatever it was, but to make sure they were there. Was there to be mechayim. They should help him that his home that he built, ala Torah, ala Voidik Chasodim, should be continue with his Rebbetzin, the children, the Einiklach. The Eibush does a Keil Moli Rachmim. Keil Moli Rachmim means you have a cup full of water, just a little touch, and the water comes out. Remember, we have a Ab Shemayim, Keil Moli Rachmim, the Eibush is sending a Chama, Ubila Movetz and Netzach, and Moch Hashem Timim Kaponim B'nai Maramein.
Reb Yankel Grun, Shlita.
I can't believe that I'm saying now. Reb Heshy, Reb Tzvi, and Reb Yosef, Zeichet Tzadik Levrocha. I don't take the word tzaddik lightly. As we already heard from the Masmidim, what a great person he was. But I'd like to share my own perspective with the Olam. When we first came to the Kollel 30 years ago, maybe a little bit more than 30 years ago, this was my first, from a distance, kesher that I had with Reb Heshy. Seeing him in the Beis Medrash in the Kollel, learning with his chavrusa lahavdim and chaim l'chaim, Kenny Lehman, that limud of a retzifus de limud, a limud that there was no distractions. It was iyun, with a gewaldike iyun. I don't think they looked right or left for hours together learning. This is not a balabas. This is a ben Torah that's also working. And at that time, my other distant connection that I had with him was, as we've heard, he had a tremendous koyach negina. He was moivedik in music, whether it was playing music, whether it was leading the choir the chokhmah that he had to bring out the koiches of each boy, whether it was helping people create a niggin, davening for the Amid for years as the Baal Tefillah in JLE, on Yomim Neiroyim, and wherever he went, everyone wanted Reb Heshy to be the Baal Tefillah. And of course, as we've heard before, his gewaldike simchas hachayim, his ability to lighten up any moment, all the time, with a gewaldike simcha and a koyach with kishrin. This was my shaykhis that I had from a distance. Klal Yisrael is doimel l'kechavim. Unfortunately, sometimes when you see a person from a distance, that shine looks very, very great. But sometimes when you get closer and closer to the person, you begin to see, unfortunately, that the milas are not as great as you thought they were. But then Klal Yisrael is doimel l'kechavim. A koichav is a star that's very, very small from where we see it. But the closer we get, the more magnificent and great the star is. And that was my zechiyah. 3 years ago, when I heard about the Psura, I called Reb Heshy, and we made a chavrussashaft. And we learned for a tkufa together, a long tkufa together. And I was able to see that this is not a small star. This is an ish ashkoilis. He's molei koiches. So many different facets and so many koiches. Mayridik. In the beginning of Parshas V'eschanan, just to describe some of this ish ashkoilis, I can't do justice, but a little bit. An ish ashkoilis, the pasuk tells us V'eschanan al Hashem. We learn from V'eschanan al Hashem how Moshe Rabbeinu, what was his gisha to the tefillah. The pasuk says, "Es godlecha, es yodcha chazaka, asher mikel b'shamayim v'oretz, asher yaseh chamasecha uchv'chigvurei Godlecha, that's Hagodol in Shemini Esrei. Yodcha chazaka, that's referring to Gibor. That's what Rashi says in Chumash. Asher mikel b'shamayim v'oretz, das is Neira. Mahu afata, the tachlus of all of us is to be medamet to the Bayir Kol Oilamis. And how this ish ashkoilis, he was so doime, he tried so hard, and he elevated himself to such a darga, godol, an ish chesed. Wow, what chasodim that came from the house together with his rebbes and shetichye, chasodim to all people. How many people they were mekariv, and how proud he was. How much pride he took in his Rebbitzins koiches and what she did for the community. He was so proud of the gewaldike gedula and the gedula of how he was mekabel everyone b'sever panim yafis, and how he was able to cheer people up no matter where, no matter what the situation was. Whenever I came to visit him, and he was really very weak. Always a good line. He didn't want anyone to feel uncomfortable, even though he felt uncomfortable maybe himself, but he didn't show it. He just wanted us to feel comfortable. And he would always have a gewaldike line to say to cheer up the mood. This is gadlus, gedula, chesed, gvura. Gvura, what's gvura? What is gibar? Gibar is a koivishis yitzrai. He shared with me kama maisis, maividike maisis that happened with him personally. He was once in shul and someone came into the shul and started to scream and yell at him. He had no idea. What's the pshat? It seemed to be a normal person and he was screaming and yelling at him. He didn't say a word. Not a word. Quiet. Didn't answer back. And I love him. And he said a gewaldige Zach. That's such a gewaldige limit for all of us. He said that he has a mahalach, that when someone, even if it's a normal person, comes over to him and starts bashing him or screaming at him and yelling at him, his perspective is something is wrong with him, something's bothering him. And I'm not going to let out my emotions and feelings to him if something is bothering him. It's his issue. This happened a few times, he told me, where he had such instances where he was quiet and didn't say a word. Isha Ashkelis. Then Noira. Noira, how are you medame to Noira? Anyone that knew Reb Heshy knew that when you were in his presence, you felt a certain Noira. He was a confident person. He had a gewaldige Seichel Hayashar. And he had a pride and he had a confidence. And that was because what he was the essence of Torah and mitzvahs. And with that, as a backbone, he was very confident whatever he was doing. So when you came into his presence, you felt that. One was able to feel it, that certain noira, but at the same time, he had a gewaldige koyach of making people feel comfortable and making people feel that he wanted to connect with you and he wanted to have a shaychus with you. An Isha Ashkelis. I really believe, Rabbi Isai, I'm not one that's roy to say, but everyone in the ganze Stadt Los Angeles and beyond, whether it's a balabas that's being mefarnes Torah, whether it's a balabas that's struggling in Parnassa, whether it's a younger man, a Rebbe, a Rav, a Rosh HaMosid, from this Ish Ashkelis we can all learn from. There's so much to learn from. I cannot not mention part of the Ish Ashkelis, another pasuk in the parasha. The pasuk in the parasha says, when it describes Matan Torah Seinu, you would imagine the ikar of Matan Torah is the Torah Alein. But the Torah says, Vashmiyem es devorai, asher yilmedun li yira oisi, yiras Hashem. The tachlis of Matan Torah was yiras Hashem, li yira oisi, kol hayom, Hashem chayim al adama. But it comes from limud HaTorah. Duch the limud HaTorah of Hashmiyem es devorai, that's how a person elevates himself to be a yorei es Hashem. Reb Heshy was a yorei. He told me that from the time he had to go to the hospital, and he was very appreciative of the special room that he had in the hospital, but he never wore his glasses. When the aides came to the house, never wore his glasses, and he told me he never saw the panim of an Isha. Yira! And that really brings me to the point. The Isha Ashkelis has many, many milas, but if you really want to touch up Reb Heshy, Zecher Tzadik Levrocha, it's Torah. Reb Heshy was an essence of Torah. Chalil v'chas, I don't want to play down any other limud HaTorah, but Reb Heshy was a person that when he learned, it was iyun. It was with an amelis and a yegiyah. The kishon, we learned the chavrusa of Musar, Chayvus Alvavis, and when we learn together, every time with an iyun, with a starkheit, with a clarity, kashis, every kasha. I think I once heard from Rabbi Yosef Maldever Shlita that he said, when he gave his chabura and shmaitza, he knew that when Reb Heshy asked the kasha every time, that was the kasha that had to be asked. He always had the kasha. And he had a gewaldig, as we heard before, a gewaldige kishrin, but he used that so unbelievably to be omel and yogei b'Torah, and that was his essence. And as I turn to the mishpacha, the children and the grandchildren, he took such pride in his children and his grandchildren whenever we spoke. How great they were and how gewaldig they were, how they were growing up. But the number one thing that was on his mind all the time, whenever he spoke about them, this grandchild said this vart, this grandchild said this nekuda in learning, this grandchild is an amkin, this grandchild spoke about his grandchild in Las Vegas, how each of them have a koyach, one has a koyach in Bekiyas, one has a koyach in Iyun, and how he wants to make sure that they're going to have a mahalach and how they're going to learn and they're going to steig. That was on his mind all the time. It was his own learning, and it was the learning of his children, how proud he was of his Edims and of his children, that they're loimdei Torah, and their Talmidei Chachamim, how proud he was. Oh, it was such a pride to him. This was his essence. He loved the Torah itself, and he was omel v'yagei b'Torah, and he loved to see how the Deiris weiter were going in this derech. Tisha B'Av was Thursday, and then we were looking forward to Nechama. The second half of Tisha B'Av is already Nachem. Then we come to Shabbos Nachamu. We were looking for Nechama. And Reb Heshy Maryles, when the mace is mutal ufanenu, I'm not sure if it's the right time to say, but one of the translations of Nechama, as we find at the end of Parashas Bereishis, is a different perspective, looking at something differently. At the time of the Churban, it was so difficult, all the tzaras. But then, as the Churban went on, we were able to look at the entire Churban with a different perspective, and that was the Nachem. This is not a Nechama, because we can't imagine the difficulty of Mrs. Maryles and the children, the devotion and the dedication that they had for Reb Heshy in the last Kufa, how much he appreciated it. He would say it to me over and over again. But he's so sensitive, he didn't want them to have to be matriach themselves. And he was worried and concerned for them, but as we heard before, he wasn't worried about himself. But I think the Nechama is watching the difference over the years, learning with him for the tkufa that I had the schus to learn with him. At first we would learn, and that was the first tkufa when there was a lot of hope medically. There was hope that Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach he would have a refuah shlema. I want everyone to know that when it changed, I don't know if they told Reb Heshy himself, but Reb Heshy was very smart. He knew what was going on. You cannot tell a difference between the two tkufas. He was very, very strong, and he was, at least in my shaykhis and my yachas with him, he was a private person. He was private at the same time that he would share. But Lemaisa, the emunah that he had, and the starkheit that he had, in the next kufa, when things got worse and worse and worse. And it was so hard for him to learn. He wanted so bad to go back to the Beis Medrash to learn with his chavrusas. That's what he wanted. Every time I came, I was able to be margish and how much he wanted just to have our chavrusashaft, how it was so important to him to learn, and how much he wanted to come back. But he just couldn't. He was so weak, so weak. And it was so hard for him to sit there and then to lie in his bed. At first he would listen to tapes, listen to shiurim, but then even that was too hard for him. So if I may say, the nechama, if we can look at Reb Heshy, there's no suffix right now, as the guf and the neshama apart from each other. You're going to the place where you love the most. You're going to join your father, who he had such an aracha for, his uncle, the Groise Dayan, and all the mishpacha members that are greeting him and bringing him to the Ginzei Meraimim, and you're going to be able to sit on Harvard and learn there, and you're going to be able to be a koyach that was so hard for you to do now, but you'll be able to do it from Shemayim. That, I believe, is a mixas nechama for us. And may HaKadosh Baruch Hu give the gewaldige mishpacha a sense of gewaldige pride, the pride that Reb Heshy had in you. Continue that pride. It's such a special family with such choshev kinder and grandchildren, and such a choshev Rebbitzin, Mrs. Maryles. She should have the koiches to continue fearing this beautiful gewaldige mishpacha, and Reb Heshy will be there for all of you to help you on your way. And Be'ez Hashem Yisborach, you'll make a mishpacha that's already mefur. Umocha Hashem Elokim es dima me'al kolbonim v'neimer amen.
My wonderful sister asked me to represent my side of the family. And even though I'm just a Pasha Yid, but since I love my sister and my wonderful nephews and nieces, so I'll say a few words, bekitzer, short. He says, you know, we say, the pasuk says, pasuk says, V'yosha holach im Elikov. V'yosha holach im Elikov. You know, there are people who, v'amol, sometimes they're like this, and sometimes they're like that. They're different. They're not the same all the time. Aber Reb Hershel was an Adam Yashar, And I'm saying things which are Dvarim shebelibo yibelev kol Adam. Everyone knows that Reb Hershel was a person who was always the same, always dependable. I'll continue and say in the parshas we learned recently that Klal Yisrael is informed, Moshe Rabbeinu knows he's not going into Eretz Yisrael, and Klal Yisrael is informed that there's going to be a long mahalach in front of them. There's going to be mahalach in Golus. There's going to be mahalach of tzaris. There's going to be mahalach of wonderful things that's going to happen. Many, many different situations will pass over them. But Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking to a tzibur of mechuzakim. He's speaking to a tzibur of the Dardeah. And he says to himself, probably what's most in your minds, what's most important to you is what's the shirish behind this all? What's the shirish behind this all? What is this all about? And therefore Moshe Rabbeinu speaks to them at the end of all these things, and way at the end he says, Ki badover hazeh einchem ma'amini b'Hashem Elokeichem. He says that if you're in a matzav of golus, if you're in a matzav where the Shekhinah is not going in front of you at all times, you can't be all the time the same. Sometimes you're going to be like this, sometimes you're going to be like that. Ki ba'davar hazeh einchem ma'aminim b'Hashem Elokeichem. And Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to them, he says, you're chachamim. You want to understand that in Chenami we're in a matzav of bilti shleimus. But how can we improve ourselves? How can we make ourselves into something extraordinary? And the way we do this, the way we make ourselves into something extraordinary, is realize that this is our matzav. This is a matzav of golus. Davar hazeh einchem ma'aminim b'Hashem. You're ma'aminim. You're b'nei ma'aminim. But the one specific thing, there was a failure. There was the thing that fell through. But this is not something which has to be like that. This is a lesson Moshe Rabbeinu was teaching Klal Yisrael. It's efshar lo kain. It's possible not to be like that. It's possible to be a glai chayid, v'yoshar holach im alekov. To be a glai chayid. And the emes is, what can I tell you, he says, like there was just said beforehand by his chavrusa, Reb Heshy was a private yid. But there's a secret. There's a secret to Reb Heshy's life, and I'll be megala it now. Inside the facade, inside the pashtus, inside the simplicity, was a person who's hoylech tamid im elikov. This is the real person who was inside, and anyone who knows him realizes this. I can tell you, I was there, Baruch Hashem, we were zeichet to be there for the last days and to see him. And I went into the room and I was saying to him, and I watched his face, and I saw this is an extraordinary man. His patira was a patira of an Adam Gadol. His patira was a patira of a person whose face shone. His patira was a patira of an Adam who knew who he was and what he was and where he was going, and there was a gewaldige nobility, gewaldige Schenkeit, a gewaldige nifledika ziv, which shone from Reb Hershel. And towards the end, he wasn't with us. He was looking towards the Rebbeinu Shalom. This is what he was doing. And therefore, this Yashrus, he stayed till the end. Everyone was mispoil, how he knew exactly what he wanted. Even the time when he came out didn't have kaiches. He knew exactly what he wanted. He knew exactly where he was going. And therefore, he was zeichataka to be Pnei Ashchina. Yoshar Yechazu Panemai. This is what I saw, my wonderful brother-in-law, Yehi Zichrei Baruch, the mishpacha shetaka have in the Chama. My sister and the children should have kaiches to continue. And they should all be mekabel Mashiach Tzidkenu b'meheira. We should be zeichet techiyas amesim and see Reb Hershel b'karayv u'bila adinem Moses Hashem dima malko ponim and leimar amen.
My shver and I understood each other very well. And I know exactly what he's thinking. Ari, was jay stack up? So many people spoke already. Enough. Chashva people, Ari. More chashva than you. It's true. But my shviger asked me to speak. I love my shviger. So, I was thinking today, when we came off the plane, I've been in LA so many times. Dating, getting married, Yom Tovim, Simchas. I can't believe I'm here for this. And it brought to mind a story, Meresh Yeshiva Zechron Levracha. A fellow came to him, a Talmud I believe, and said that he had just broken the news to his mother that she had a terminal illness. She, I believe, was in her 40s. And she said to him, to her son, "So soon?" And that's the feeling that I came. So soon, Daddy? So soon? We need you for so many more years. They're becoming grace from every mishpacha. Don't you want to be here to enjoy them? You got to now, you're sitting and learning now half a day, a whole day.
How could you leave us so soon? But the Eibishter is Abba Rachamim. And if the Eibishter decided that it's enough time, the Shver has been in the praise there enough, and it's time to go to the Traklin, then it's time. I'm going to repeat just everything people said in different ways, my own perspective. I also want to point out the tremendous dedication, above all, my Shviger's unbelievable dedication, always and especially over the last kufa, and the children, my wife, and the siblings-in-law. And I want to add something which maybe I'll get in trouble for, but never stopped me before. I was once walking with my shver about a year and a little more than a year ago, and he said to me, I just feel it's important to say B'Rabbim, maybe I shouldn't. He said to me, all my children are trying to figure out how to take care of me. But do we really figure it out? I just want to make a couple of points, again, from my perspective. What I think the Yisayid is, Yisayid of the Shver. The Shver was a real person. Everything about him was real. He was not superficial in the tiniest degree. His learning, as has been mentioned, was real. Don't tell me a vart, don't tell me a fluffy vart. Explain it to me. It better make sense. My kids knew that we call Zaydi Erev Shabbos, you have to have a vart, and it better make sense. And he's going to ask you a cash on it, you better be able to defend it. He wasn't interested in a nice, something that you just looked up in a sefer and you saw, you don't really understand. You better understand what you're saying. Real. As has been said, the Shmeitzer Chaburai, Hirosov Rai Moldover, about the Shver's kashes. And I spoke to myself in learning so many times, and if you know, sometimes he came to us for Yom Tov or whatever, and so I did things at my table the way I do them. But if it's a halachic thing, I better know what I'm talking about. I better have the Mar Mekaymis to be able to prove that what I'm doing is correct. His davening was real. Shver davened for the Amr a lot. And you hear the way, and he didn't have to daven, he didn't have to shlapsach like Shemi, but you still heard from the way he davened, every word he understood exactly what he was saying. He once told my wife that when in Moedim, he has this in mind, he has that in mind. The davening was real. I was never zeichet to hear him Yom Neiron, but I know if I would have heard him, you would hear that. You would hear the ernstigkeit, not the, you have to cry here because it's Nisan HaTaikif, and you have to kvetch here because it's Tzachol Ma'aminim. He felt the words, because he was a real person. His chasadim were real. He saw a mensch, somebody who other people may not have noticed, but the Shver noticed he's the type of person, maybe he doesn't have matzahs. Maybe I should offer him matzahs. And he gave him matzahs every year. Somebody, people might think it's a dreita mensch, but he gave him matzahs every year because he knew the person needed it. He gave tzedakahs to other people that nobody would have, it wasn't a campaign, it wasn't a part of a charity event. It was, I know this person needs money. I think this person needs money. That's what it seems to me. I don't care if it's the chesed that looks good per se. His hashkafas were thought out. We had many discussions in hashkafa over the years. They were thought out. They were real. It was something that didn't necessarily go with a party line per se. What I think is the richtige hashkafa, I thought about it. I looked through it. Shver had a tremendous coverage for Talmid Chacham. But what's a Talmid Chacham? You had to earn it. If you want the Shver's covered, you had to earn the covered. The tzaddikim were the real tzaddikim. You know, they don't faher you when you go to the store to buy a frak. Your beard can grow white and long, even if you're not a Talmid Chacham, you're not a tzaddik. But if the Shver had had a time, had a reyach, to be able to smell was der emes Talmid Chacham, an emes tzaddik, and a tremendous emes, real cover for such people. It was mentioned, he said to me also about in the hospital, it's so hard with the nurses walking around, the short sleeves. Who's thinking about that? Who's thinking about such a tkufa in somebody's life? That's what he's thinking about? But a real person, everything is real. Yeah, this is also something. This is also important. And if I'm 65 years old and I stopped working and there's no reason for me not to wear my tzitzis out, I'm going to put my tzitzis out. My whole life I didn't do it, so now I'm, ki'ilu being melamed choiv my whole life I didn't do it, but now I could do it. I couldn't do it till now. Now I'm doing it. It doesn't matter how it looks. This is the emes zach to do now. That's what I'm doing now. So it's not surprising that somebody like that understands what it means to die. It's a paradigmatic thing. Most of us are going to die someday. Maybe even all of us. But we don't think about it. The Eibishter was not be and the Bria for whatever reason that it shouldn't be on our minds. But somebody who's real is able to overcome that maseicha, that mask of the very obvious real thing that we're all going to be 6 feet under one day, and look at life with a whole different hashkafa. It's a matter of being real. One more nakuda. My wife always says that the hashkafas that she got in life are bigger from her father. Daddy was an emes mechanech. His chinuch wasn't knee-jerk, reactionary chinuch. His chinuch was thought out. They were saying today that sometimes, Baruch Hashem, not anymore, but sometimes, somebody can get into a car accident, and the natural reaction of a parent would be to be very upset. You cracked up my car. But a kid naturally feels very guilty. You don't have to tell the kid, you cracked up my car. I know I cracked up your car. A mechanech, they said, apparently it happened more than once, but they said that it was not a word of criticism. Because that's not chinuch. It's not chinuch to yell at you for cracking up my car. I can yell at you for other things that require yelling. This is not something that requires yelling. And as in-law children, he didn't feel his achrayus to be mechanechas. Not only Avram Moshe, who's perfect, but even those of us, the in-law children, who are maybe not perfect. In 23 years, I said this on a different occasion, married Baruch Hashem over 23 years now, I don't remember a time of getting unsolicited advice from my shver. We asked him advice, sure, but getting unsolicited advice from my shver? He's a person with opinions. Never gave me unsolicited advice. Why? Because you're your parents' problem. I don't have to mechanech you. He spoke once at I believe it was a yahrzeit gathering for one of his parents, and he said that it's a mabel de gezach, that in this mishpacha, we heard a hashkafa from him, that in this mishpacha is tremendous amount of shalom. An extended family, sometimes there could be families that fight over things. Some families fight over money, fight over other things. In this mishpacha is tremendous amount of shalom. And I could tell you that the hashkafa made it over. How do I know? The last tkufa, it's a difficult tkufa. The last tkufa in a person's life, and after the end of life, is a very tense time. It's a very emotional time, a lot of stress. But the shalom in the mishpacha, not to say that there wasn't a stress moment, but the overriding consideration was always shalom. The hashkafa went over. Daddy, you never let us ask you mechila. You said a child doesn't have to ask a parent for mechila. Now you can't stop me. I ask you mechila on behalf of myself, my wife, my children. We certainly were not mechabed you properly. Please be Mel Yosha for us, for the Mishpacha, for the Tzrachim, you know that we need. You know the Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael was such a, you have felt for Klal Yisrael, be Mel Yosha for Klal Yisrael. Be Al Mavos HaNetzach, Macha Hashem Lakim Dim Me'al Kapon Remer Amen.
If you would have known you'd have to listen to this many speeches, you would have lived at least another week. B'shus, the Rav, the Rosh Kollel, my Rebbeim, my brothers. When my father's father passed away a few years ago, after years of dementia, I remember on the way home from the Levaya, my aunt Toby said that they brought my father back. The Levaya brought my father back. And for the last 3 years, it was very different than what we remember. I was just on the plane, I was looking at pictures, old pictures, and I realized how I completely forgot everything. I was just, you're living in a different world when you're dealing with this for 3 years, and I just, if you could indulge me a little bit and allow me to try to remember these things. My father had a strength that can't really be understood. My father grew up in Borough Park. He learned by Rav Shmuel Feivelson in Muncie, eventually by Rav Meir Hershkowitz, and he really credited his Mahalach Halimut from Rav Meir. And he moved after a few years in Lakewood. He moved out to LA for chinuch, and eventually went into the music business and computer programming. And with all that, my father's life completely revolved around Torah. I don't know when it was, probably before I came around, that he completely fell in love with the kollel. Every minute that he had extra was spent in learning in the kollel. And up until the very end, every extra penny he had was for the kollel, if he could. Rabbi Fassman Alav Shalom was, in my father's eyes, the only reason why the city of LA exists. And any atzlacha that there is here is only because of the kollel. And my father came at night to learn. Somebody told me that when they joined the kollel years ago, that he thought he was one of the younger lights. He was just sitting there, learning beyond like a regular younger man. You couldn't tell. Back east, it's more common, or was more common, that a balabas looks like a younger man. There's not necessarily as much of a difference, but when my father was in LA for the last, years ago, it wasn't as common. And my father he was a demus of what a balabas should look like. He really just, every free minute he had, he would go to the kollel every single night. As everybody said, he'd insist on Havana. Havana was very important. There was no such thing as just like going through a sugya. You didn't go right there. You had to understand it. You had to, know what you're doing. He loved learning with Chaim Lehman, Kenny. He learned for, I don't know how many years, 30-something years probably, maybe more. And he learned every night. People said when he told my father a vart, he told him a shtickle Torah, you have to be prepared to back it up. You couldn't just, when we were kids, you can't just take out your dvar Torah from the Rebbe and just read it off the sheet. You had to know it. There was no just getting up and reading it straight. Sometimes you had to look it over before and say it like you knew it. Rabbi Moldaver, my father, joined the Shemaitz this year, and he challenged him on anything, and we always heard about it. that, when it came to his children, the main thing that he cared about was our atzlacha and learning. The only thing second to the kollel was telling his home and his family. We grew up in a home which is not very common, extremely peaceful. Our Shabbos table was set by Wednesday night. Friday afternoon, my father was sitting at the piano playing music. It was calm every night. We had guests. Guests loved our Shabbos table because he didn't change because a guest came. We did the same thing. We sat, we sang, we schmoozed with them. He knew how to make a joke at somebody and they would laugh and still appreciate it. And people kept on coming back. When the grandkids came around, he would sit there. He was so devoted to his grandkids in every way. He'd sit there putting them to sleep with a guitar, by the piano. Every grandchild, he had like a different sprach. He had a different sprach with every grandchild. He knew how to talk to each kid in their own different way. Look at pictures. I was looking. He's just sitting there and looked like a camp scene. My father's just sitting there saying his troublemaking days, the stories from his troublemaking days in yeshiva, and the kids just sitting there lapping it all up. Maishi was able to, he taught Maishi his bar mitzvah pshatel and his laning. And we're not going to be zeichet for him to be teaching Yossi also. My father was gifted with a tremendous musical talent. And these talents were used as a means to parnasa in the early years, and through having a band, and ultimately through being a beautiful and inspiring bal tefillah and running the LA Boys Choir. Aside from being his personal healthy outlet, the choir, he believed very strongly that he was providing an extremely healthy outlet for the many hundreds of boys that went through his various choirs. This past Pesach, we had a kumzitz in the house where a few choir alumni came by and sang with him, and he told me after that he has a certain sense of pride that he feels like he had some small chilek maybe in their musical talent. And I heard from kids all over, they learned how to daven from the Yomad from him, he really gave them something else. And this was my father's life for 70 really beautiful years. And then the next 3 years would be difficult, and only because HaKadosh Baruch Hu deems it so, we can say it's beautiful also somehow. A little bit more than 3 years ago, me and him sat in this dirty side room in Mount Sinai Hospital. The doctor said he's 3 to 6 months. And what followed was 3 years of incredible strength. For 3 years, my father suffered through painful treatments, extreme nausea, sleepless nights, constant agonizing waits of scan results, his house burning up in flames, and he never questioned a thing. When he met a friend shortly after he got sick, and he was asked how he's doing, he said, "A Mensch tracht, und der Eibishter lacht, und einmal darf man mitlachen. A man plans, Hashem laughs, and sometimes you just have to laugh with." He was happy and cheerful to the end, and not until the very end. He never asked us to come in. Every single time we would come in, it was, you come in to help mommy. You never wanted us to come in for him. He was always able to do it. And his whole focus for his whole life, and especially the last 3 years, was always mommy. While being with him numerous times over the last 3 years, seeing how uncomfortable he was, he never uttered a word. He never shed a single tear. For 3 years, we experienced what real Yisurim are. For 3 years, we experienced what real strength is. For 3 years, we experienced what real chesed is from the community. For 3 years, we got to experience what a real Rav is. For 3 years, we experienced what a real community is. And for 3 years, we experienced what a true Ezer Kenegda is. Mommy, only you truly know the ups and downs. With the family all living out of town, our visits were a lot less frequent than we wish they could have been. My sister shared with me that not so long ago my father told her that he hopes she never has to be such a good wife like Mommy is. You stood by Daddy day and night through hospital visits, dealing with doctors and a myriad of other medical issues, running a house, running a business all by yourself, making yanta for children, pretending everything was normal. Everyone says Daddy was the strong one. For 3 years, Ma, you showed the ultimate strength. There's endless people to thank in this community. It's not really normal what people did for us for the last 3 years. I just want to thank 3 people by name, because it wouldn't be shaykh even to get through this matzav, even a drop without it. Rabbi Tauber gave the model of what a community rav is supposed to look like. From day one, I don't know where you even came from. You took us on, even though we weren't like fully part of the kehillah. You could count maybe on one hand on the Shabbosim that you missed visiting. Rain, heat wave. We knew we could always count on your care, your concern, and your guidance. For my father, for my mother, and all of us, I want to give special thanks to my Rebbe, Rebbe Gruen, who also just, his chizuk was truly inspiring. What started as a small chavrusha became the highlight of his week. It was at certain times when he was very weak, there was very few people that he was able to, see, and Rebbe Gruen always was an open door. He didn't have koyach to learn, so Rebbe Gruen would come and just sing with him and ask him for help with his nagunim. And he gave him such a chashivas at a time where he was slowly diminishing and it's hard for him to do anything, and Rebbe Gruen really just gave him such a pride and gave him life. And I want to thank Reb Kalev and his wife Shashi Klein. There's no way that any of us, especially my mother, could have made it this far without you. You were there supporting my mother every single day, doing the job of what us 5 children were unfortunately not able to fully provide. The community is unusually special, and I wish we could thank everybody. Just to name RCCS, Bikur Chelim, Ateres Avigail, Masaskim, Chaim Medical. My parents, Mechut and Dr. Kielsen, was there with us every step of the way, always able to analyze every decision from a proper view. People made us Shabbos for weeks on end, full Shabbosim, and people showed up week after week. You know who you are. My father, even if he wasn't able to show it, appreciated these visits so much. We pushed off our Shabbos meals so that every week people could just come. It's not easy to come, especially somebody that you know, and see him like that. It's uncomfortable, and the people that did it's really, really appreciated. I just want to thank his doctors, Dr. Hendefar, Dr. Kopen, his caretaker, Angelo, who was with him till the end. And Denny, thank you so much for all of your hard work. And finally, I'd like to thank my siblings for putting up with me and for really being there for Daddy and Mommy every chance we had. If I could just ask Mechila, really tried our best the last 3 years.
The Kfura will be in Lakewood tomorrow. Family will return back to LA Thursday, Friday, and Sunday morning. The address is 542 North Highland Avenue. Please rise for the Kel Mali.
El Malay Rachamim Sheikhein Bamiroimim Hamatzei Minuchon Echoino Ala Kanafei Ashechino v'malais kedaishim u'toyanim kizoyar harakia mazihinim es nishmas Reb Tzvi ben Reb Yosef she'alach li'olamo bavor she'nodefu tzedaka biyad haskaras nishmasoi Meganeiden tiei menuchasoi Lachein balorachamim Yastileyo miseiser kinafov li'olamim Mitzroy achayim es nishmatzoi Adonai hu nachalotzoi V'yanuach al mishkavoi V'sholoi menoi marhoi